Recording in progress. Thank you for telling me that. So I used to, I, I drove around Tokyo on a 50cc motorcycle, if you can even call that a motorcycle. It's more like a motor scooter, with this big bag loaded with stuff. And I didn't know really Tokyo at that point either, so I just drive around looking at all the shops. And then I would find something, a shop that looked like, oh, they might want to to buy some of the stuff that I have. I'd walk in the store, they'd be terrified. This big foreigner with this huge duffel bag that he's carrying over his shoulder. And then I did my konnichiwa, which is about all I knew. So I just opened the bag rather than talking and took a bunch of stuff out and then started talking. And after a while, I had a pretty serious clientele. And I didn't make a lot of money, but because of the way I was doing it, it led me to live my own lifestyle. Work a lot when I wanted to or could, and not work a lot when I didn't want to or couldn't. So I think, I mean, when we're no longer young, we're no longer young. But like I've told my daughter, who's just 30, and she grew up in Tokyo till she was, I think, about 27, and she's been living in LA for the last 3 years. And I told her when she was even thinking about doing it, I said, this is the time to move. You're a young woman. You have no responsibilities in Japan. You don't happen to have a boyfriend, and certainly not a husband. Because once responsibility starts piling up, if nothing else, it seems harder and harder to what's the word? Unleash is the word that comes out of my mouth. To unleash yourself from wherever you are living and just go live a completely new life. And you don't know anybody in that new location, and they don't know you. And it turns out now she works in one of the most upscale hotels in the world, which is the Beverly Hills Hotel. And really world famous. And they have various movie stars stay there for anywhere from a day or two to a month, maybe. And they have royal families from various Middle Eastern countries. And so the cheapest room is $1,000 a night. But the royal family, the husband and wife, will live in one of the cottages, which I'm not even sure, but they'll cost at least $5,000 a night. And then they usually have an entourage of about 15 people. And of course, you're not going to put them in another hotel, so they're staying there. That's $15,000 a night just for them. And they usually stay for about a month because they're shopping. And you can't get your shopping done in less than a month, believe me. And they're coming back. The royal family's not carrying the bags, but they're coming back loaded every single day. Anyway, long story short, they spend about $500,000 every time they go to this hotel. So who's ever the salesperson for them is making a really good living for himself, because I'm quite certain he's getting paid on commission. And he deserves it. This one salesman might be bringing $3 or $4 million a year into the hotel. That's great sales. So that's my little story or two for today. And my throat's gotten a little bit better, so that's good.
Does your daughter like it, Charlie? Does she like it there?
My daughter says that living in LA is like living in Disneyland.
Oh, it's nice.
Like,
Beautiful.
if I'm not being a bad boy when I say this, but women who are maybe like 40 pounds overweight, wearing stretch leotards and stretch top, and I mean they have spare tire and spare tire, and they got enough spare tires to drive the car, a whole car, And anyway, that's just one example, but they don't care, or they certainly don't seem to care. Um, and that's LA. Um, so she likes it. She she realizes that American people are not nearly as nuanced and able to pay attention to social signals as Japanese people are.
Mm.
And if you've ever been to Japan, or even if you ever knew a Japanese person fairly well, it's so true. Um, and I think when you're around a Japanese person, it's actually a little bit. Uh, I've had this happen many times. I'm bashful to say that I'm an American because we come across, and I'm a New York City guy, so that's, you know, that they got a little extra zoomph to them. And the Japanese people are just looking like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. Oh my God, I can't believe. But of course, they never say that because they're Japanese. So,
Thank you, Charlie, for that. Yeah, I just want to mention one fast thing. My sister, my older sister, who's 75, she went to Japan at 18. She had a pen pal, and they were Buddhist. But anyhow, short story gone fast. 40 years later, the pen pal got in touch with her and invited her back to Japan, and she went, and they had a whole thing for her. That's how hospitable they are.
Yeah.
From
yeah,
what
yeah,
unbelievable, unbelievable.
yeah. Martin, what are you going to say?
Just wanted to say that that's absolutely true. Yeah.
You know, of course, I've often been a bad boy in my life. And when they have these various, I'm trying to think of, well, like the Cherry Blossom Festival, where everybody's out on blankets, eating and drinking underneath the cherry trees, and it's really beautiful. Well, if you're a clever little foreigner like me, a foreigner is called a gaijin, an outside person. Um, you can eat and drink all day because if you just look a little bit like this at that group over there, oh, come. And most Japanese can't speak any English, but they're going like this. Next thing you know, I'm sitting down and drinking sake and eating this delicious food. And of course, they're offering me the very best of all of the food that they have. So it's a complex culture. I get along still to this day very, very well with the woman that I was married to, Japanese woman that I was married to for 20 years. And I'm not going to go into the whole long story. She's a wonderful human being. Her father thought it was a disgrace to their family that she married someone other than the Japanese. And he made my life with her pretty impossible, to where he eventually talked her into giving him the hanko, the stamp for my bank account. And he took $150,000 out of my bank account because he didn't think that I really deserved to have that money in the first place. And that's when I just said, sorry, but I can't live like this, you know. But when I had cancer, she came over twice with my daughter. And she also spontaneously paid for part of my treatment. I went down to the hospital when I was ready to leave, and I said, "Let me have the bill, please." And I was kind of holding my breath to see how much it was going to cost. And they said, "Oh, sir, your wife paid the bill this morning." And so I saw her a few minutes later. I said, "Hidoko, I'm not complaining by any means, but I do kind of have to ask, why did you go ahead and pay my bill?" And she said, "It was just my way of showing you that I still appreciate you." And I got a few tears when she said that, you know. So, so I'm just wondering here. Oh, there he is. I thought I had lost Gilmore. Um, so I like to read a few quotes or sometimes poetry at the beginning of the class, usually, because I like to a little bit transport everyone to a somewhat of a different place than when they come into the class. Um, and I gave some quotes from Gregory Bateson and Milton Erickson last class, and I'll give some quotes again from, well, this time mainly from Gregory. There are times when I catch myself believing that there is such a thing as something which is separate from something else. Next, it takes two to know one. Next, yes, metaphor. That's how the whole fabric of mental interconnections hold together. Metaphor is right at the bottom of being alive. And in Ericksonian hypnosis, apparently Milton, no matter what you said when you were at a Milton Erickson session, pretty much no matter what you said, Milton would say, "Oh, that reminds me of a story." And he would tell a story that made sense, whether it actually had happened before or whether he was completely making it up in the moment. And he would tell what's known as isomorphic stories, stories that everybody could relate to. And when you're hearing a story that you can relate to, whether you have any internal dialogue or not, internally you're saying, uh-huh, oh yeah, yes, oh yes, uh-huh. And that was his way of putting people in trance, even though the average student had no idea that he was doing hypnosis. And when I say something like I just said, and I take a fairly long pause, and I purposely now just took another fairly long pause, it's to have that last thing I said have some impact. And it would be really stupid to say something like, "Well, I hope this next thing I say really impacts you." That would be the best way for it to not impact you. So when I say something that I think has importance, I pause because you have little choice but to pause at the same time, unless you're going to all of a sudden start teaching the class for me. And in that pausing, you're going to think some about what I just said. So that in this kind of work that I do, the kind of coaching that I do, I don't like to tell anybody to do anything. I don't feel that's a high quality way to go about things. But I just do my best to mark out certain things so people start paying attention. Wisdom is the intelligence of the system as a whole. Next, we can never be quite clear whether we are referring to the world as it is or to the world as we see it. Everything you believe in, everything you have experienced is fully dependent on your previous experience and what you believe in. We experience the world as we believe it to be, not as it really is. And, sometimes it could be really funny. Like, let's say you're in Grand Central Station let's say there's two guys in Grand Central Station, which is always crowded. And one guy kind of elbows the other guy and says, "Wow, look at that woman." And the other guy looks out. He might not have any idea who his friend has been looking at, because he doesn't have the same taste, he doesn't have the same experience or anything as his friend. And often the friend will have to say, which one? So that it's really important. People who tend to get in a lot of arguments tend to believe that their opinion is the correct opinion, really losing touch with the fact that everybody in the world has a different experience, and therefore everyone in the world is going to have a somewhat different opinion. And, with some of the advances in, I'm not sure if the right word is for photography even really, but scientists can map a snowfall. And they're able to see each and every snowflake in that snowfall. And every single snowflake in the snowfall is a somewhat different shape than every other one. And that leads me to believe and feel a number of things. One is, oh my God, what kind of machine does nature have up there in the sky? And also another thought comes, why aren't they just all the same? Wouldn't that be a lot simpler? But it's not about simple. And every snowflake is different. And it's really important. And I think particularly women get brainwashed 5 times more than men. Don't try to look like someone else. Particularly, don't try to look like that last woman you saw in that last advertisement you looked at. And I do see that a little bit, like catalog sales and stuff, they start having a woman that look like a woman you might meet on the street, instead of this perfect 36, 26, 36, whatever it used to be considered perfect. They have women a bit overweight. They have some women even a bit too skinny for most people's taste. They have some women modeling some of the clothing that are 60 years old. Why not? That 60-year-old woman is likely going to be buying that outfit after she sees the 60-year-old model wearing it. So let's all take a deep breath. And in regard, I have one of my best friends is visiting me from America. And she's 3 years, I shouldn't say this publicly, she's 3 years younger than me. So since she's not here, I can say she's 73 years old. And since you won't be seeing her, I can say she's 73 years old. And as you might guess, we're talking about a lot of the things we learned together, like in the same classes, and a lot of the subjects that we both studied, whether it was together or not, you know. And one of the things she said is, she said, Charlie, isn't it interesting? You've most likely never had a client that really understood why they were coming to see you in the first place. And she paused, and then I finished her sentence for her, as I often do. I said, yes, and by the time that client figures out truly why they're coming to see you, they won't need your help anymore. So, although I do give advice sometimes, even though lots of coaching schools say, oh, you shouldn't give any advice, I think that's nonsense. If I see somebody doing something wrong, I'm not going to say nothing because I'm their coach. That would sort of be ludicrous, I think. You know, and why shouldn't they learn from some of the mistakes that I made? But at the same time, it's very important that the client figures out the deeper issues they have on their own, outside often of the actual session. And I'm talking to Leisha and saying, well, I haven't lived in the United States for like 40 years or so. I did teach in one of the bigger coaching schools for a while back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And I taught in the advanced track. And at the time, the only school that had any real value in my mind was George Washington University. But I'm not up to speed at all in any of that. But what I can tell you is the coaching schools keep on trying to slim their program down to not make it, quote unquote, too long so that they can charge you less than some of the other schools. So you want to, Leisha, if you're going to, you know, at some point look into being a coach seriously, there's actually some excellent schools in the UK. I don't know if it would make any sense to go to an online UK school, but look for a school that seems to approach the whole topic from an academic point of view. And again, you also won't have any clients that come to you starting out knowing the real reason why they're there. And by the time they figure it out, they'll no longer need your help. And so that also means it's very important that you don't just jump into whichever topic they name starting out. In fact, one of the things I think is really kind of cute and funny is someone will come and I go, well, Miss Smith, why are you coming? How can I help you, perhaps? And what's very common, and men will say the opposite, but the same, the woman says, my husband is driving me crazy. And that's an immediate, excellent coaching point. There's a few coaches here. What might you say to a client that says, my husband is driving me crazy. Anyone like, and you don't have to be a coach. What might you say? Dun, 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 dun. And there's really no right answer. I mean, there's really no wrong answer.
I would ask.
You say, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Excuse
sorry.
me.
I would ask what is driving you crazy about him.
Okay, you would ask what is driving you crazy about him. Okay. Anyone else?
I would say, why do you allow his behavior to drive you crazy?
Okay. That's interesting and possibly dangerous territory. Why do you allow him? And I mean, I never asked Gilmore if you ever slap him around or not, but so I'm not sure about that. But allowing, and we don't want to know, but
Yeah.
allowing is a bit of a dangerous word to use when you're talking to a couple. Anyone
And
else?
I might ask
I would say
what goes on inside you when whatever this is happening.
Okay. Ginny, that's close to right there, Gilmore. Ginny.
And then I would say, I'm curious what happens to you when you feel this way.
Okay, that could be good. That's a little bit down the line.
Or I'm curious, I'm
curious.
I'm curious why you say that.
Okay, so we love in this style of work, we love to say "I'm curious" because that means usually you can get away with saying almost anything after that. But here's what I would tend to say. So, Miss Smith, you said your husband's driving you crazy, and just to be clear, by the way, does your husband own a gun? If you don't mind me asking. No, he doesn't own a gun. Okay, good. I just needed to clarify that because your husband isn't driving you crazy. Like he doesn't put a gun to your head and say, get crazy because I'm going to say something now, whatever. You are driving yourself crazy.
Ooh, dangerous, Charlie.
And there's Rob just the right moment.
Rob.
I think that's what I was trying to allude to when I said allow.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah.
I reworded it in the wrong
That
way.
Charlie's driving her crazy too.
Yes.
So
I have to.
Charlie, I want to ask you something off topic just for a second. Are you seeing the gallery view? Can you see everyone?
There's one or two people, too many, not, I shouldn't say too many, that's stupid, but I can see most everybody.
I just want to make sure on the upper right-hand corner, if you see view, it should be set to gallery, like a little grid. I just want to make sure you have it set that way. Just so that you're not.
Oh, no, I
struggling
don't.
to
I'll put,
see.
you asking me to put it on gallery?
Yeah, put it on gallery and then you'll be able to see and respond to everyone a little
Okay.
bit better.
Yeah, I like that actually. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's
So
better.
you see-
Thanks, Rob.
We're really wanting, hoping that our clients, our children, even that wife that's driving me crazy, we're hoping that people more and more take self-responsibility for what it is they're doing. So, you know, when I say Rob really annoyed me when he just interrupted me, I really, and it's not even in my mind good enough to say I got really annoyed when Rob interrupted me. I found myself annoying myself. when Rob broke in to give me some advice. You might think, oh, Charlie, come on, you're going to parse every word. And the answer is sometimes. And if you study Noam Chomsky, which is where the meta model in NLP came from, it's really and really important how it is you say what you say. So I want to do a very specific exercise. Partially, I think most of you, many of you will find it surprising. And it also shows a bit of the width and breadth of the Seishindo model. So I'm going to just demo it, and then I'm going to ask who has a challenge or a dream that they'd like to talk about doing what I was doing. So here's what I'm going to be doing. I'll just show you. You won't be able to see because you can't see down in my lap. I'm slapping my legs. I'm slapping my hands. I'm slapping my legs. I'm crossing my arms. I'm slapping my legs. I'm raising my hands. I'm slapping my legs. I'm crossing my arms. I studied brain gym years and years and years ago. This might be one of the many great exercises on brain gym. I'm not trying to take responsibility for all of this. So I'm going to talk about most anything. So my friend came from the United States, and she's been here for 3 days now. And it's so wonderful to meet someone you really get along with. And when her and I are talking, like I playfully said, I finished her sentence as I often do. A little bit, I'm that kind of person anyway, but I know exactly in certain circumstances what it is. Yeah, and I got confused right there. Rob, can you do just, without speaking, just do what I ask people to do?
Okay, so first there's lap, and then you went up, and then lap, and then across. Like, keep it like
Okay.
that for now.
Yeah, okay.
So
We'll leave
lap
it right.
and up, and
Yes.
then lap and across.
Yeah, so in that little bit, and I wasn't talking about anything that was making me feel uncomfortable or whatever, I got a little lost. And rather than start teaching something different than what I just taught, I stopped and I asked my friend Rob. So whenever anybody in one of these classes works on either a quote unquote issue, which is almost like a dirty word, or a challenge, or a dream that they have, I want you to know that you're fully respected as an intelligent, competent person, even if you might be feeling a little foolish to be saying my wife is driving me crazy or whatever, So we're really, or at least me and Rob, and I don't know everybody, maybe David Brown, and we're not, and Ginny, we're not judging people, and maybe none of us are. So I just want everybody to be clear about that. And so who has a challenge or a dream or whatever that they'd like to talk about, please? And you'll wind up learning something in the process. And it's never quite like if I said, and who would want one of these delicious chocolate donuts? Raise your hand. Yes, there's a couple of people raising two hands. They want one donut in each hand. So you're going to learn about something. I mean, you're going to learn about yourself some. Who would like to do the movement and discuss something?
I can try.
Okay, Martin can try. And just so I don't have to interrupt if it's necessary,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going like this, that means slow down.
Talking or doing the
Yes.
movement?
Slow down. Well, I don't think you want to be doing this and talking slow. Mostly, when people talk about something that they don't have a good deal of confidence in, this is my experience. Rob is always free to say something different, or David, for instance. When people talk about something they don't have a lot of confidence in, very, very often, most of the time, they talk too fast. And when they're talking, whatever too fast is, that's a judgment call. But they talk faster than they can really properly emotionally digest what they're saying. So it's very possible I'll go like this. Go ahead, Martin, start in.
So I do the movement and then talk about my dream. All right.
Do you do both at the same time?
Yeah. Okay, got it. Nice. Okay. So my dream is helping or trying to find people who are very talented in something and enable them to monetize that, or at least find a community or something where they can practice their talent a lot. So that means I see that as a business. So I want to understand business a lot so that I can help them starting everything. For example.
Okay, good. You're doing great. But let me stop. And you're doing a little bit too good. So
Okay.
like this. We never liked that as a coach. The bloody line is good right from the beginning. Give me a break. So we're going to make it a tiny, tiny bit more complicated. So
Yeah.
slap the legs, both hands up. Slap the legs, cross. Slap the legs, clap your hands.
Okay, so three
Okay,
different.
do that without talking now, please. Once at least. Go ahead.
Okay, and I do this. Yeah.
Okay, again. Too fast. And this is similar. Yeah, slow down. You continue. Go ahead and I'll talk. This is similar when I say to people when they're not really confident, they tend to talk too fast. You're going like, I get the feeling like you want to make sure you're actually still got it all, what I just said. So you're rushing through it. Good. Okay, start talking again, Morton.
Okay, so for example, I would like to help to talk to someone and find out that they are good at something. For example, let's say cutting hair. And
okay, great. Stop. And again, this is all just my judgment, and I welcome other skilled people to give a different opinion if necessary. This time around, it seemed like the movements were not really joined with the talking.
Mm,
It's like two separate activities for me.
mm.
That's my opinion. How do you feel about it, Rob? Maybe you say you didn't notice it, or maybe you feel no, or what?
I felt the same thing. It wasn't quite as smooth or congruent, which probably means we're on to something.
Yes. Yes.
And,
Well,
and I also noticed that there was an interesting little movement going with your jaw. It's like I felt like there was a conversation with the jaw moving a little bit side to side.
yeah. And not that this is necessarily important, because I don't like to overdo this part. Martin is almost definitely a very visual thinker, because he a lot of times he went up like this with his eyes. And in NLP, we believe usually the person's accessing visual information. Kind of like if you said to me, Charlie, that friend of yours that's here, what color blouse did she have on yesterday? If I go up like this and go red, I almost certainly saw her in a red blouse. So, Martin, what's important here is that you do your best to make this into one activity. And you're doing great, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and start again.
I need to understand, what does it mean to make it into one activity? Like having the same rhythm, and like, I don't know how this belongs together.
You'll figure it out.
So, I don't have to do that, or I just how do I do that?
You're doing this for the first time.
Yes.
Something unusual.
Yes.
Maybe nobody, maybe I don't even fully understand it yet.
Okay.
So you're going to learn by doing it, and we'll critique you nicely.
Mm-hmm.
We don't say, that was terrible. We say,
yeah.
This last time, it seemed like it was almost like you were looking to get a little bit of the movement out of the way, and then you could say a few words, and then you got a little bit of the movement out of the way.
Okay.
And then
So being smooth on both, in talking and
Yes.
doing the movement. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, doing it slowly. I start without talking and then start in the second one, right? Okay, so.
Okay, good. Let's stop. Mainly because my good friend Rob brought this up, is I don't know how to really duplicate what you're doing. And this is all great because we all have our little ticks, T-I-C, tick, right? You do. Okay, somebody turned this off. You're going like this with your jaw.
Yeah, I have braces and I feel like with my teeth a little bit. So that's why I'm doing this sometimes.
Yeah, and how does that, doing this, how does that help you?
I don't know. It's like funny. Like here, it feels a little bit different than here. So I touch it with my teeth.
Yeah, and how does that help?
I don't know. I just do it. I
Okay.
actually didn't notice until now so much.
Okay. See if you can not do it, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Or do
Is
it
that better?
more.
Yeah.
Do it more. Do it bigger.
Bigger. Okay, I'll try to not do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I start talking? So my dream is helping people who have a talent to make a business out of it, or at least get better at it and use their time efficiently doing that. And what I mean by that is, for example.
Okay, great. Let me ask you to pause again. Again, these are just my opinions. No truth here. First of all, I think we're at a good level because you went for a little bit with the movement before you even started to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I still kind of felt a little bit that you were doing the movement and the talking somewhat separately.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhat separately. We're talking nuances here. Okay? Start again, please. You're doing great.
What I mean by that is if there's someone talented in cutting hair, but does not know anything about business or how to monetize that, I want to be the person that is actually helping them with everything that is around that business or around that talent. So I want them to be able to use their talent as good as possible. And not have
Excellent.
to think.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, with the movement, tell us how you feel about going through this together with us.
Going through the dream.
The whole process.
So it's confusing to me a little bit. I don't know what it's about. So I'm kind of thinking about what is this about while explaining and figuring out what it's helping me with. And also, I don't know if that's just me or that's the point, but what I noticed is that it's easier for me kind of to not be super nervous when explaining my dream, because
You're not being super nervous, or you are?
I'm not super nervous
Yes.
because for me it feels like this movement is taking this part of having the time to think about being nervous away from me. So I'm only
Excellent.
thinking about this movement.
Everybody's hearing this.
Yeah.
And again, anybody's free to chime in. And for Alicia, this is something that most likely there isn't a coaching school out there teaching. But when he says, I'm gonna put it in my words. When he says, I found myself doing all of this and feeling calmer than I would expect to feel, because by doing all of this different movement, I don't have enough brain power left over to get nervous. And he's shaking his head, yes. I said it in my own words. I didn't add in, and Charlie's such a great guy or anything like that. Just, you see, this is where we want people to get to. It's a first step. You know, it was the first time in my life I was able to talk about X without getting all nervous. Rob?
I have a question, you know, because it's with this type of coaching, where, you know, you as a coach, you're really in the moment with the person, and you're making a judgment about when to give a further instruction or not, right? So I'm wondering how you make a judgment call of what's enough and what potentially could be too much. There was one moment where I thought Martin might start to get overwhelmed with corrections. And, you know, recently, just to share, recently I was practicing Tai Chi with someone, and they said, oh no, your pinky has to be like this, and no, your head has to be upright, and and after a while I wasn't really enjoying doing Tai Chi anymore, and I certainly wasn't relaxed or feeling my chi flow. So I'm wondering, how do you, Charlie, what are you keying off of that's letting you know what's when to do more and when to let it go?
Thank you. Excellent question. So first of all, I've only met Martin once before in my life, but we had a lunch club conversation together. And a lunch club is, you can look it up. It's an interesting club where you can talk to people, as many as you'd like, for 45 minutes or more. And so, first of all, I'm assuming Martin had a pretty reasonable opinion of me. I might have tricked him, or I don't know what, but he said he'd be interested in, without me needing to pull out my gun, he said he'd be interested in trying a class. So that means, if we're using NLP language, or anyway, I already got a yes from him. He sees me as a at least mildly interesting, doddering old man. That who laughed?
That was Gil.
Okay. And then there's certain things that I usually don't do, even if I broke some of these rules today. I give myself a little freedom. I go, for instance, Rob, do it like this, please. Watch me. Do it like this, please. I don't say, Rob, raise your left hand and then put it down. Raise your left hand and put it down. Because when I'm seeing myself on the screen, it looks to me like I'm raising my right hand. I mean, I still get confused in the mirror all the time. That's why I'm a little dangerous when I'm shaving, So I learned this from Aikido. You never want to say, or almost never want to say, anything that brings the person up into their rational, logical mind. Because their rational, logical mind is not going to be what helps them to truly understand what it is they need to understand. And I don't know how radical that might sound to some of you. Some of you will say, of course, we've known that for 30 years, Charlie. So that there's no such thing as taking certain courses in the university. After I took that third psychology course, my whole life really started working because I learned so many good things in that course. Life doesn't work that way. The reason, some pain will come into each person's life, but suffering is optional. And we don't figure out logically how to be happy. It's a mix of our whole experience. And in fact, it is moving, and we're moving when we're thinking about it. So first of all, I don't say left hand, right hand. And I'm not claiming to get this right all the time by any means, Rob, it's funny, I'm checking in to make sure if I'm talking nonsense here, this is the next thing I'm going to say or not. I don't think I'm talking nonsense. When I'm correcting, for instance, Martin, I'm doing my best to notice all of his nonverbal behavior. The look on his face, if he is still moving his hands, what's happened to the movement and stuff. Because I believe, we always the first real prime mover of change is nonverbal. It's somatic. So I'm looking to see what happens to the quality of the somatic movement. And I often do try to overload the student a little bit and then just really back up. Because one of the things that will teach me is, I'm just making up stories, Martin, so don't think I'm trying to like peer into your brain or anything. But one of the things I learned is, does Martin not like to be critiqued by anyone? Or did I just make it too complicated and he couldn't really stay with the activity anymore? That's completely on me. So there's a difference between, why does this guy keep critiquing me instead of praising me? You see, and I've said to him 10, 15 times already, you're doing great. Good, continue. And when
Charlie,
I say you're doing, go ahead.
Well, if you were alone with Martin doing this coaching, would you still have, since he started out flowing pretty good with his words and his movements, would you still have added in the clap for more complexity? Or would
Okay,
the initial experience of...
I got myself confused with what you just said. I thought he was doing it too well right from the beginning.
Right.
Okay, I thought you just said the opposite. So
No. Yes. So if you were alone with him, did you just add that
okay,
to
but it
create an
doesn't matter.
experience?
Okay. It doesn't matter whether I'm alone with him or not.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't taxing him enough
Okay.
to really help him learn something here.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, I know Rob plays guitar amongst other things. And if I give him a song to playing the guitar that's just way too simple for him, he'll play that song maybe because he's a nice person, but I'm not going to be teaching him anything about the guitar. So I go, actually, let's stop with that song. Let's try this next song, which is a little bit more complicated. So the point that Rob is bringing up is, how much is too much and how much is not enough? Like I said, because I'd like to be fairly honest, I don't always get it right. I'm a human being. And I also can be very good at apologizing. And I think anyway. And I'm forming a relationship with him. And we need a little, what's the word? When you rub two things together, we need a little friction there to kind of see what's going to work and what isn't. Because one thing that we all know, I can't do this with Martin like I would do with another 3 people. The basics I can do the same as far as, doing the movement and stuff, but the basics is not the crucial part. The crucial part is, what's the quality of the movement and the talking coming together as a seamless flow. Have I obfuscated? How do you say that word? Obfuscate? Have I obfuscated, Rob, or did I answer your question or not?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Charlie.
Charlie,
So
if you got everything you wanted out of doing this,
Excuse
what
me?
would it be? If you got everything you wanted out of doing this activity with Martin or with anyone, what would it be? I mean, he said he was less anxious while he was talking about that topic. Is there more, or is that enough?
Yeah, well, I want to say, Connie, oops, she already left. She sent a message saying she had to leave for a previous engagement. The first thing is, when I finish this exercise with Martin, I want to still be having a copacetic relationship with him. That's really important to me because, what's the proper word? It's the only ecological way to work. I might, if I really have a strong hunch, and I do very much trust my intuition, I might actually say something like, you know, Rob, anyway, thanks for trying this. We didn't get the results I wanted, but that's the way it is sometimes. Let's go on to something else. Knowing I'm going to leave Rob stewing some with the way that I just like fluffed him aside. And I'm going to come back to him later after he's been stewing for 5 or 10 minutes. But that would be a special thing. Mainly, I want to maintain a copacetic relationship with whoever I'm working with. And this isn't like a money thing or something. Oh, he won't pay me for another session if he doesn't like me. I'm not trying to be liked by him. I want him to feel that he's spending his time is well spent, that he spends with me. So for him, the movement was a bit too easy in my estimation, my opinion. So I made it a little bit more challenging. And you could see that it immediately drove him into doing more, or at least the way I saw it, he was doing a bit more thinking in his head when the movement got more complicated. Okay, David Brown, other than perhaps boring you today, and I'm just being playful, of course, what do you have to say on what you've been watching today?
I appreciate the mind-body connection, and I think, you know, what you said earlier about, you know, someone goes in their head, you're not going to get to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
And no friction, no traction. So there's
Okay,
this balance.
I never heard that one. Okay, no friction, no traction. I got to remember that. Thank you. Yeah.
So I think, you know, there is a balance in observing and creating enough friction so they're out of their head. And I think I would reference with Martin being a snowboarder that he probably can access when he's snowboarding. I'm sure he's not thinking. And, you know, how do you have a meaningful conversation and be in that flow?
Yes. And by the way, my daughter just turned 30 years old a few weeks ago. I mention her often because we get along really well. And the first time she ever went snowboarding in Japan was like the first 10 minutes of a class. She hasn't even gone 10 feet on the snowboard. She slipped and fell and broke her arm so badly, her elbow.
Oh, God.
She needed something like a 4.5-hour operation and hadn't even gone 10 feet. And bless her little soul, she was out skiing last week or the week before in Colorado. And she said, you know, Dad, I knew how to ski before I went snowboarding or tried to go snowboarding. I never intend to try to go snowboarding again. And I got to tell you, even though it was a few years ago that I broke my elbow with the snowboarding, every time I go skiing now, I'm rather frightened in the very beginning, as if I don't know how to ski. That's what we all tend to do with our experience. We take one activity that's similar to another activity and we sort of blend them together in a way that's not always a great idea. Okay, but let me take a big leap of faith here. Thank you, David. And let's ask Martin. And please tell the truth, Martin, because
Always.
even though we didn't come up with any strategies or this or that or whatever, do you feel, let me put it to you this way. Do you feel, in regard to helping people with their businesses and stuff, do you now feel a little bit less confident, more confident, or the same as before? In regard to helping people with their businesses, based on this little talk we had today, and we didn't go for any particulars, do you feel like you'll be less able to help people, more able to help people, or the same as before we did this? And the truth, please.
I hope I understand the question correctly, but feeling more able or less able or same able to help people in doing that, I feel the same kind of, because my skill set did not change.
Okay.
But I think, because I realize now, this is kind of an aha moment I had, like when you're distracted with something and then explain something else, you don't have enough brain capacity to be nervous. That makes me more comfortable, I think, in general, talking about anything that is more complex or relevant or important. So maybe it helps me.
Yeah, so isn't that fascinating what he just said? Can you translate that, Rob?
I can certainly pretend to translate it. I would say he discovered something perhaps with different language that might be better. You said, are you better able to serve them? Or are you less able or the same? He said, I don't know about that, but what I found is I have a new way of being, perhaps when I get nervous. So
Yes.
I would say perhaps Martin is able to go a little bit further than he went yesterday, or to take that chance with snowboarding again in a safer way.
Yes. Yes. So the thing that's really, really, really important, and it took me, I'm a very slow learner, so it took me years to understand this. You could just, snap your fingers or ring the magic bell or whatever, and the person gets what you want them to get. And boy, I'm glad we finished that up today. Let's go on to another topic next week. Their whole internal process and what happens during the week, and even in the 20 minutes since, or 30 minutes since we work with Martin, all of that is part of the process. And one of the things that's really crucial to understand is, and I'll say this in a playful way, and if it ain't one goddamn thing, it's another. Which means, don't worry about it, Gilmore. You'll have plenty to work on for the rest of your life. It's not because you took 5 sessions with Charlie that everything is straightened out now. Because life keeps on occurring. And some of the way we're reacting is not the best possible. And then there's just the fact of life. Some pain will come into everyone's life. Suffering is optional. No friction, no traction. I love that. Michael Landry.
Charlie, I gotta leave also, but I want to thank you so much. It was very, very, what helped me tonight, and then I just share is to utilize some of the techniques I know with touch, you know, even in my thought process, just to utilize some of the tapping, some of the havening I learned,
Yes.
and what I learned tonight,
Yeah.
that how vital that is. And also to pause, slow down, vital. And I was reminded tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you,
cool.
Martin, for volunteering, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael.
Yeah, awesome.
Was there a question there, Charlie?
Most likely. Just what is it that you would like to say, if anything?
Oh, it was good. It was interesting to watch how you work with Martin. But there's things for me to think of that, well, how I can work on myself as well, and why there's issues like that that's so easy, I think, to get distracted in their own mind, and that crap comes up. I liked a few of those metaphors you used earlier. Like about the woman with the gun. Saying why he's not driving you crazy, so you're driving yourself crazy. It's
Yes.
changing your own patterns, and
Yes.
so that was a learning moment for me as well, and I can use
Yeah.
that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And I like the patterns as well.
Yeah, and again, I mentioned the study of brain gym. You can look at that on the internet. There's a ton of information, and it's been out. I'd say it's been out for 40 or 50 years, because when
I've seen it
across, and none of these are the magic bullet in and of itself. But when you have all of this together and possible to draw on, and I'll just say, for instance, something I sometimes say to people, like if someone first session and they say something like, basically, "Oh, Charlie, you haven't worked with anybody ever that had as many problems as I have right now, blah, 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 blah." I'll most likely say to them right up top is like, let me just be clear that I'm not at all certain that I can help you. I pause so it really can take effect. But you know what? I do know that working together, we have a hell of a lot more potential than working individually. Something like that.
The other thing I liked about is that having that curiosity.
Yes.
All things, as my wife is a mental health therapist. You ever hear of IFS, internal family systems?
Yes.
But people have these parts, and sometimes you can't challenge a part, but you'll tell people, "I'm curious about that part. Tell that part,
Yes.
I'm curious about it." And then
Yes.
the people of those parts, then their parts start to change. And we were just talking about a case last night. It's a very interesting one. I thought, the curiosity is a really good way to, as opposed to saying, "No, Charlie, you got to change."
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Martin, I hope you'll be great if you come back another time. David, Jill, do you have any experience as a coach? I have no idea.
I'm not a coach, but I'm an occupational therapist. I'm retired now. But what you had said before kind of struck me, because I don't like public speaking. And back in February, I also do art, and I was vending at an event, and I was demoing. Sorry. And I was demoing, and I was able to explain my process as I'm sewing. And it just, the words just kind of came out as I was
Good.
speaking,
Good.
and as I was working. So
Okay. Far out.
it was kind of like an aha.
Okay, so now I have a little background from you, which is good. And so we should end because it's about ending time.